Picture this. A whole nation of people just paused. Behind them, you've got 40 years of failure in the desert, dust and graves. In front of them, a river they can't cross yet, and a future they're terrified of. And they're all gathered to listen to the very last words of their leader. This is the moment, this is the setting for the book of Deuteronomy.
And that's the key right there. They are standing still. They're not moving forward. They're not going back. They are caught in this incredibly tense space between a past that broke their parents and a future that's going to demand a kind of faith they haven't really shown yet. The entire nation is just holding its breath. So, this brings up the huge question at the heart of the book. I mean, if you're their leader and you know you're about to die, what do you say? What are the last words you choose for a generation that was born in the middle of nowhere, whose parents were rescued from slavery only to die in the sand because they lost faith? This isn't just a history lesson, it's a final, desperate plea.
And that's exactly what these are, words from the edge. To really feel their power, you have to understand where they're coming from. The very edge of one man's life and the very edge of a nation's destiny. You know, the name itself tells you so much. In Hebrew, the book doesn't have some fancy title. It just starts with Elei Hadavarim, which means these are the words. And that says everything, doesn't it? It's not called the second law or the rules part 2. It's personal. It's a sermon, a talk from a dying father to his kids. And the person speaking is Moses. He's 120 years old. He's led these people for his entire adult life. But he knows for a fact that he won't be the one to lead them into the promised land. He can see it from a mountaintop, but he will never, ever set foot there. And that deep, personal sadness, it gives every single word he says an unbelievable weight. So why was this big speech even necessary? I mean, why repeat everything? Well, to get that, you have to grapple with the tragic story of a generation that was completely lost. The staggering truth is, the people he was first talking to, they're all gone. Just let that sink in for a second. Every single adult who was miraculously saved when the Red Sea parted, every person who heard the voice of God boom from Mount Sinai, is now dead. They were buried out there in the wilderness. The text is so blunt about it. Saved, yet they did not trust. Redeemed, yet they did not obey. An entire generation got the promise, but they never actually got to live in it. And this just lays out the tragedy perfectly. The trip from the mountain where they got the law to the land they were promised, it should have taken about 11 days. 11 days. Instead, because of one moment of fear, it turned into 40 years of aimless wandering. A whole lifetime lost. So what was that moment? What was that failure? Well, they sent 12 spies into the new land. They all saw the same thing, an incredible, fertile place. But 10 of them, they just saw the problems, the giants, the big walls. They were terrified. Only 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, focused on God's promise. And when it came time to decide, the people voted with their fear. And right there, faith lost. And this brings us right to the core of why Moses is giving this speech. There's this principle. God has no grandchildren. Faith isn't something you can just inherit, like property. Each new generation has to stand up and choose for itself. And this is the moment for these children to choose differently than their parents. Now, this leads to maybe the most powerful theological idea in the whole book. It's about the fundamental order of things, the way God works with people. And it all comes down to this: grace before rules. The divine pattern is always the same, and it's so important to get this. First, God acts to save people. He parts the Red Sea. He rescues them from slavery. That's step 1, redemption. It's only after they're saved, after they're free, after they're his people, that he gives them the law at Sinai. That's step 2, instruction. Grace always comes before obedience. He saves them before he tells them how to live. And you see this same dynamic playing out right here, at the edge of the river. The land is always called a gift. The land the Lord your God gives you. They didn't earn it. But at the same time, they're commanded to act. Go in and possess the land. You see, it's a partnership. God gives the gift, but they have to have the courage and the faith to go and take hold of it. Now, what about the people already living in the land? The text is very specific about how this is framed. It's presented not as an unprovoked invasion, but as a long-delayed judgment. It says God actually waited 400 years until the corruption of those nations was complete. Israel wasn't chosen because they were better than anyone else. They were chosen to be the instrument of God's justice. And the law God gives them,
Wow, it was radically different from anything else at the time. In most ancient kingdoms, the law was all about who you were. A noble got one kind of justice, a commoner got another. But not here. There was one law for everybody. The king and the foreigner, the rich and the poor, the citizen and the orphan. It was this radical vision of justice without any favoritism.
So Moses brings all of this history and theology to this incredible, dramatic climax. See, it's not enough for the people to just listen to his words. They have to make a choice, a public, binding, unforgettable choice.
He presents them with a covenant. Now, the best way to think of a covenant is like an ancient treaty between a powerful king and his people. The king, in this case God, starts by reminding them of all the good things he's done for them. Then he lays out the rules for living as his people. And finally, he makes it crystal clear what the consequences will be for loyalty or for rebellion. And he doesn't just talk about it. He makes this choice physically real. The whole nation is supposed to stand in a valley between two mountains. From one mountain, Gerizim, the blessings for obedience will be shouted out. Life, good harvests, security. From the other mountain, Abel, the curses for disobedience will be read. Exile, drought, defeat. The choice could not be more vivid or more clear. And here's the key part. After each of these clauses is read out loud, both the blessings and the curses, the people can't just be silent. They have to respond. They have to shout amen, which means so be it. They are publicly, personally, and vocally agreeing to the terms. They're binding themselves to the consequences of their own future actions. And with that choice made, with that word spoken, Moses' work is almost done. His final job is just to leave behind a legacy that will outlive him. His final days are just incredibly poignant. He writes and sings a song about how God has always been faithful, like a solid rock. He speaks a personal blessing over each one of Israel's 12 tribes, kind of looking into their future. And then he climbs the mountain. He gets to see the land. And then he dies. His life's purpose is fulfilled, even in his own personal disappointment. But his words, they didn't die with him. Not even close. Deuteronomy became the moral and spiritual backbone for the entire nation. Later on, the prophets would quote it constantly to call the people back to God. Every time the nation failed, they would understand it through this lens of blessing and curse. And centuries later, Jesus himself would quote from this very book when he was facing temptation in the wilderness. And that's why this ancient text still has so much to say. They were at the edge of a new life. And, in so many ways, we find ourselves in similar spots, don't we? Standing between our own pasts and our own futures. The fundamental questions that Moses asked and the choices he put before them, well, those words are still speaking. After all the history, all the laws, all the warnings, it all boils down to this one final command from Moses. It's a plea from a dying man to a new generation, a plea that echoes down through thousands of years, right to us. Choose life.